Hey, Marcus Housewithy here. This week we've got everything. A mad push to finalize shielding for launch, ships being loaded with engines, this behemoth being lifted, and that is all just at Starbase Texas. Falcon 9 action again, this time coming in for this hairy looking landing. OneWeb completing their satellite constellation, big news coming for future Artemis missions, and a bunch of other fun stuff to quickly run over. Oh, and I'm not even going to throw some lame April Fool's Day jokes all over the place. Let's just rip into it.
Okay, Neil, we can see you coming down the ladder now.
Kicking off at Starbase's launch site, it might feel just a little bit like Groundhog Day with SpaceX diligently working away at the Orbital launch mount. Bear with me though, because it's really coming down to crunch time. I mean, just look at the sheer amount of cables going up, almost all of them connected to welding machines. Just take a look at this image here, welding going on all over the place and loads more equipment being lifted onto the mount. Now, what exactly is all of this for? Let's take a look at some of the photos from RGV aerial photography. From this perspective, we are able to spot that the orbital launch mount deck has been upgraded. Zooming in here, you will see all of these new attachment points on the now far less rusty cover. This is most likely a new layer of added shielding to protect the launch mount itself from the colossal forces and the heat of the exhaust during liftoff. An added bonus of this extra shielding is that it looks to be easily removable. Everything that we are seeing here, including all of the shielding on the outside, has been designed to allow it to sustain a serious amount of punishment and still be in tip-top condition, ready to launch again. So to verify everything is in good working order, SpaceX also did some testing with the 20 Raptor boost quick disconnects. That is always a cool shot to see, and if you want to know what this may look like from above, Corey here did a great render of this a while back. Looks pretty mad from below too. Given that SpaceX have been working right next to these quick disconnects, I can see why they would have wanted to just purge everything, just in case some debris made its way into the system. So I see you asking in the comments, when do these modifications stop? Well, it seems like this could be the last week for now. Once seemingly satisfied with everything, SpaceX workers went into high gear, rapidly tearing down the scaffolding near the bottom of these new external shielding pieces. Just look how much better everything looks compared to a week ago. The only thing that may be a little contradictory here is that they actually built up the scaffolding more on the top of the launch mount. That is, I suspect, due to the fact that the inner railing has been removed for the installation of those new protective covers on top. SpaceX has also installed 2 fire hoses inside the tank farm, and they've already tested them out. They look to be placed in kind of an odd spot though, don't they? Why here? Well, I think the purpose for these is not to extinguish any fires on the launch mount, but instead within the tank farm itself if fire manages to get in there. They've actually got one installed on the liquid oxygen side and the other on the methane side of the tank farm. So, time for the hot topic of the week. Booster 7 finally made its return to the orbital launch mount after all of those upgrades were completed. On Monday, 2 self-propelled modular transporters together with the required counterweights were moved towards the launch site. At first I thought the lift would happen on Tuesday, but it turned out that the closure was due to the adverse weather. Meanwhile, Epic Spaceflight's hoop cam here had a nice angle of the teams completing the berm near suborbital Pad B. During the early hours of Wednesday morning though, the chopsticks came to life. They swiftly rose up the orbital launch integration tower and opened to greet Booster 7. Within moments, that 70-metre tall behemoth was moved towards the stacking location. Over the course of a few hours, the teams further prepared for the lift and removed the temporary pressurization plate. It was time for the chopsticks to once again lift Booster 7 onto the launch mount, and this time hopefully the last. It sure has been a long ride since it was first lifted back in May of 2022. Wow, that was almost a year ago. We also got to see a new fresh view of all of those 33 Raptor engines. You should also notice that SpaceX removed all of those engine bell covers from when it was lifted off a few weeks ago. Alright, so let's take a look at what's been happening over at the build site, because there's been plenty of activity there too. Beginning in the high bay, we saw Ship 28 lifted again, but this time with its middle liquid oxygen section. In usual fashion, it was then placed onto the turntable ready to be welded together. That leaves just one major stacking event left for this ship, and that is going to be with its thrust section. I also think in this case, they're going to lift the ship up on top of the liquid methane downcomer. How exactly will they do knew this? Well, this part of a pedestal crane was moved inside the high bay last week, something that looks quite similar to what SpaceX used in the past to lift the liquid oxygen header tank inside of the oxygen tank of Booster 5. Right, so let's just move over to the back of the bays towards the flapless Ship 26. Just as my last video was going live, the purpose of that brand new stand soon became clear. A hint was actually dropped quite a few hours earlier with this Raptor vacuum engine moving in. Awesome shots here by Fabian Ramirez showing this engine labelled number 205. What's also really awesome, I think, is that a lot of parts for the false ceiling inside the thrust section are already installed on the Raptors. That is great news because it looks like SpaceX is still planning to fly this ship after all. Later in the week, a second Raptor, number 212, was on the way, and soon the third was installed as well. So Ship 26 now has the full set of Raptor vacuum engines. An interesting observation here is that they actually lift the Raptor vacuums up into the engine bay with this rig here, and that sits inside the engine bell as captured by a Starship gazer. The way they have built the nozzle cooling channels on the extension here looks extra refined now, and well, stunning really, doesn't it? All that remained at this point was for the 3 gimbling sea level engines to be installed. Now, an update on the foundation for what looks to be a new megabay near the Star Factory. Interestingly, it doesn't exactly share the same type of foundation previously used for the megabay or the high bay at Starbase, does it? But oh, it does actually. We just have to look a little bit further away. That's right, the foundation at the high bay over at Roberts Road in Florida does look very similar, doesn't it? Now, I can guess what you are extra curious about. With Booster 7 back on the stand, how is Ship 24 going nearby? After a short stint this week where the aft flaps were untied, SpaceX quickly tied them back up to the thrust section ahead of its transport towards the launch site. The self-propelled modular transporters loaded with counterweights made their way towards the ship, and in no time at all, here we were ready for rollout as captured beautifully by Nick with NASA Spaceflight. Hopefully that is going to be fully stacked again real soon. Now, if I'm not mistaken, Ship 24 was the first ever vehicle stored at the Rocket Garden here and then not scrapped. It's nice to see that this area is now more than just a graveyard for outdated vehicles. SpaceX gave all of us nerds a little bit of a treat by updating their website just a few days ago. Finally, after all this time, we've got new updated images, information, and crisp renders of the Starship, Super Heavy, and Raptor engines. Put it all together and what have you got? The Starship full stack. Now, what was most interesting to me was that we appear to have pretty concrete confirmation on the Raptor engine numbers here. The sea-level Raptor engine can provide 230 metric tons of force. The Raptor vacuum engine, though, with its larger exhaust section and expansion nozzle, can provide thrust up to 258 metric tons. Really nice to see all of this updated before the big event. The detail, I will say, in their new renders is pretty sweet, but they've got nothing on what's coming up. How can we move on to the next exciting story of the week without first sharing the preview for the Orbital flight test production? You know the one I'm talking about? Yes, it has been finally released late this week. There has never been anything quite like this created, and the artists of spaceflight have certainly not disappointed. These are just a few short scenes from the full video, all depicting a flight test of the long-anticipated launch of SpaceX's Starship. Many long months of work, this epic saga, almost 20 minutes long, is truly an absolute masterpiece. Ryan Hansen, of course, producing a great deal of it, along with Corey, aka Seabass 3D, doing a bunch of character animation work. Nick Henning and Casper Stanley organising astounding audio to go along with it. It is just freaking amazing. But it is even bigger than that. Just look at all of the artists involved, at least in some capacity, on this project. Anyway, enough of me just talking about it. The link is in the description below, go and check it out, and please do take a second to follow and subscribe to Ryan, Corey, and all of the artists out there. They get to do this simply because of people like you interacting with it all. What was your favourite part of this work? Let me know below. We also had yet another Starlink launch taking off just after 4 PM on Wednesday from the Cape in Florida. You've always got to love those afternoon flights as we get to see that view of the beautiful Earth below. Another 56 version 1.5 satellites were on board, and these were added to the Starlink Generation 2 constellation. A great time-lapse for you there of the booster heading right up to main engine cutoff and stage separation, and booster 1077 here coasting along to prepare for its fiery re-entry. Now, you might might be asking why these version 1.5 satellites are going into a second generation shell. After all, this launch was in fact originally supposed to be launching those new Starlink V2 mini satellites instead. As I've said in previous videos, the V2 minis are far more capable than previous versions, but the problem, I suspect, is that the V2 minis are simply not quite ready yet for mass deployment. In fact, some of those from the very first launch at the end of February was deorbiting over a week ago. I suspect that further development and testing is still needed before we're going to see those launch in larger volume. Until then though, the constellation is not waiting and the 1.5s are better than launching nothing at all. Great footage of the booster as it plummets back down to Earth, landing this time on the drone ship. Just read the instructions and check out the angle, almost doing a power slide to stick that landing. This is the fourth successful landing and recovery of this particular booster, with its first mission having launched Crew 5 to the International Space Station. Not a bad way for any booster to start its launch history. Now, on April the 3rd, just a few days after this video goes live, you are finally going to get to see the announcement of the team of 4 astronauts destined to fly to the moon on the Artemis 2 mission. 3 of them NASA astronauts and the other from the Canadian Space Agency. Just remember, this is going to be the very first mission with crew included to travel to the moon since 1972, which I think is just amazing, so keep an eye out for that announcement. We also, of course, had the huge reveal just recently of new potential spacesuits. Yes, you might have noticed these scenes recently from Axiom Space and NASA at Space Center Houston in Texas. This is the Axiom Extravehicular Mobility Unit and is the spacesuit that the crew of the Artemis 3 mission plans to be equipping themselves with. Now, I will just quickly say that this is still a prototype. There is a lot more work and add-ons required yet. One of the main talking points though was the color because, well, you wouldn't want to wear a dark grey or black color to keep the suit cool, would you? No, you would use a white one to reflect a lot of the solar radiation away rather than have it absorbed. After all, the temperature in the sunlight is around 120 degrees C where this is going to be used. In actual fact, this colour was an added layer here used to hide the suit's proprietary design elements. Axiom Space apparently collaborated with a costume designer from the series For All Mankind, so a lot is really being hidden here and the final suit will of course be mostly white. Now with this suit, they're going to be using a different technique of just hopping into it through a hatch. That's much quicker and more efficient than the old Apollo style suits where they needed to put on layer after layer. One of the main concerns with lengthy moon missions is dust from the surface. It caused all sorts of problems with Apollo. It makes it hard to get a grip on tools and equipment, it gets into all of the suit joints and it clogs them up, and it dramatically shortens the operational life of all of the equipment just due to how abrasive it is. On top of that, it overloads the air filters, and it is of course terrible stuff if it gets into your lungs. I think this is all a pretty great idea. The back hatch design of the new suit aims to largely eliminate some of the issues by simply allowing the suit to remain external to the inside of the spacecraft. The backpack can essentially become a docking port. Axiom Space is also said to be using materials that's going to keep dust from adhering to it to help combat some of those problems, although they really don't go into much detail here. Another big area of focus is mobility. The astronauts need to be as flexible and comfortable as possible to maximise productivity. One such small improvement can be noticed already in these gloves. These new ones seem to be very flexible if you compare them to the ones from the Apollo suits. You may also notice some other neat features like a light band over the helmet bubble for better vision, and let's just hope that these video cameras on the side send us all some nice, crisp, clean footage back. Now remember, there was this Soyuz space capsule up at the International Space Station having a major coolant leak back in December. Well, on Tuesday, it finally departed the space station without any crew on board. That's a pretty unusual thing to see, and that was of course due to their vehicle being replaced by the Soyuz MS-23 rescue mission over a month ago. MS-22 has now been returned to Earth in Kazakhstan so that engineers can study up on it to figure out what went wrong. The leak was assumed by Roscosmos to have been caused by a micrometeoroid impact, but then another second leak occurred on the recent Progress vehicle in early February, which raised a few eyebrows. Whatever the cause, let's hope that they find a little more about this puzzling problem. We don't want to see this happening again anytime soon. Now, early in the week, we got to see some action from India. Yes, another batch of OneWeb satellites were launched on top of the launch vehicle Mark III, developed by the Indian Space Research Organisation. But wait, I hear you ask, isn't this the GSLV Mark III? Well, yeah, it is, and they've renamed it for good reasons. It was originally called the Geostationary Satellite LV, but that no longer made a great deal of sense when it started being flown to other orbits like this mission. Now, this was a crucial mission for OneWeb because it was the 18th and the final mission devoted to building out their first generation satellite constellation in low Earth orbit. It was also the last of 2 launches contracted between the ISRO and OneWeb. The first happened about 5 months ago in October of 2022, and now here we were back at the launch pad again, ready to take the next set of satellites to orbit. This time around though, it was a much faster turnaround of just 72 days. This was the 6th launch for the LVM3. Really good to see some much nicer stream quality from ISRO, streaming this one at 1080p. Great shots of the rocket prior to flight, and a pretty spectacular launch with those colossal double S200 solid rocket boosters there as it roared off into the sky. A little over a minute later, the central L110 liquid stage ignited, and following that, the 2 SRBs separating. That is a very different process to, say, the SLS, which ignites the solids and the core stage on the ground at the same time. A little over 5 minutes into the mission, the C-25 cryogenic upper stage took over the job to deliver these satellites into their designated orbits. We even got to see footage of the satellite deployment from the onboard cameras. So with this mission, OneWeb now has successfully placed 618 satellites into orbit, and actually they only require 588 of those for total global coverage. The remainder is simply there for redundancy. They are aiming to roll out global coverage by the end of the year, and they later confirmed on Twitter that all of the satellites were successfully deployed with meticulous precision. Precision not unlike that required by Henson Shaving supporting today's video. These talented aerospace machinists started out manufacturing precision parts for the International Space Station, satellites and rovers. Along the way they discovered that this precision could be applied to shaving, and bam, the Henson razor was born. This super little unit supports the blade all the way across, extending out to only 0.0013 inches. That's about 33 thousandths of a millimetre. Because of that crazy precision, their razors offer a smoother shave with less flex or vibration of the blade along your skin. That's a big cause of irritation and razor burn, by the way. Blades that aren't held firm can start to sort of dig in, especially if the blade starts to get a little dull. The razor also has this perfect 30-degree blade angle that eliminates the uncertainty in how to use it, and it provides the same user friendliness as a multi-blade cartridge razor, minus of course the repetitive waste and the repeated expense. The build quality of this instead is world class, plastic free, and it will essentially last you a lifetime. All you've got to do is switch out the double-edged blade when needed. That is super quick and easy, by the way. The handle unscrews, just swap the blade out, and that is it. These aren't proprietary blades. You can pick these up anywhere for about 10 cents each. Luckily though, Henson Shaving is offering a 100 blade pack, enough to last you for years, totally free if you pick up a razor. Just head to hensonshaving.com, select the coloured razor you would like, and just make sure that you've also added the 100 blade pack to your cart. You need both of those items in there for this to work. Enter in code Marcus in the final step of the checkout process, and that is it. 100 free blades. Upgrade your shaving experience to aerospace grade. Thank you, Henson Shaving. Now, while we were on the topic of the ISRO, a quick mention here about their third lunar mission, Chandrayaan-3. That is going to be their second attempt at landing on the moon, and the spacecraft is quickly finishing up all of its essential testing. Here you can see it fully stacked. If all things go well, we should see it launching on the same LVM3 vehicle type in just a few more months, with most sources hinting at July. So that is another week done and dusted, my friends, with a few final mentions in a second, but if you love the stuff we do, you know the drill. So grateful each and every single week that we get to keep doing this. I couldn't do it without you, especially all of the amazing subscribers, patrons and YouTube members. Thank you all very much. Now, here's a few things to keep an eye out for. iSpace announced during the week that mission milestone 7 is now complete for the hakuto-r lunar lander mission 1. It is thankfully now safely orbiting the moon following its successful orbital insertion maneuver. Therefore, the lunar landing attempt should be happening sometime late this month in April if everything goes to plan. I just wanted to point out a few of these sweet engine tests too. This here is Firefly conducting a hot fire test, but with a twist. They had Gavin from the slow-mo guys here helping out with some super slow-mo footage. I'm a big fan of those guys. Just look at the exhaust pulsing here as it starts up, and all that happens in just a fraction of a second. Blue Origin also published this thrust chamber assembly test by their BE7 team. The BE7, by the way, is intended for use on deep space vehicles, first shown, I believe, on the descent stage from the Blue Moon concept. But yes, it's going to have many uses if successful. Thanks again for joining me today. If you would like some more space action, check out any of our deep dive videos here on screen. And by the way, we're working on a new deep dive video right now that's going to be released in just a few weeks instead of a typical news video. I am super excited to see what you think of that one. Thank you for watching all this way through. I'll see you all in the next video.